Thank you, Chairman Hurd. I appreciate it a great deal. I think all of us know, just based on your testimony, there have been a number of failed IT projects in the federal government. And many of these projects go on for years and years and years before someone finally steps in and stops the bleeding. And the examples are abundant. One of them that comes to mind is a VA. For years, they tried to develop an integrated financial and asset management system across the agency. In 1998, they made their first attempt at this project. Then they terminated it 6 years later in 2004. So 2005 rolls around and they decide to try it again. As recent as 2009, they had planned to deliver a fully operational system by 2014, but all of it was terminated in 2011. That program was $609 million. And the examples are on and on and on. NASA, NOAA, and DOD, $15 billion project that lasted over 8 years before it failed. It goes on and on and on and on. So, Mr. Powner, let me begin with you. Why do so many of these projects fail?
So there's some common themes on all these. The VA systems you talked about, the requirements were poor. They had a very poor schedule. There's also a lack of focus on delivery. The combination of the DOD, NOAA satellite acquisition. We started off on that. The requirements weren't good. The complexity was far too much. We finally settled on a satellite that had far less sensors. So this gets back to some basic things that FTAR is trying to do. If these agencies would go smaller in more incremental bites, we would deliver a lot better. It would be easier to define your requirements in smaller increments and deliver in smaller increments. I think that's key. Also, too, with some of these programs, there wasn't real clear accountability. I think with what you're trying to do with FTARA, where the CIOs are in charge, one of the comments I made in my opening statement is we just recently talked to all 24 CIOs, and only 8 of them told us that I have the authority to cancel one of these troubled programs. So 2/3 do not have the authority to cancel a troubled program in their department or agency. We still got a lot of work there.
Okay, so lack of accountability and biting off more than they can chew, basically you say. Ms. Lee, let me ask you this, just kind of piggybacking on what Mr. Powner said. Why in the world does it take so long to fail? I mean, at some point, does it take 8 years to figure out this thing's not working? Does it take $15 billion or 609? Why does it take so long to fail?
It should not. You know, that's the basis of what are your measures, at what increments, who's looking at these things, how is your contract structured, and the ability, and I think it was very well said, the ability of people to raise their hands, speak up and say something's not going right and actually have an impact.
So who's responsible to raise their hand and say something's not going right?
Certainly depends on the program. If we're talking large programs, there's usually a program manager who's in charge of that, and he or she's usually surrounded by a team.
All right, so the program manager is where the buck stops, in your opinion, your testimony. Okay, so
for large programs, some are small.
Sure, yeah, but the larger programs, I think, is primarily what we're zeroing in here. Mr. Spires, you led the IRS Business System Modernization back in '04. You got a lot of experience with all this. In your opinion, why does these projects fail?
Well, to pick up on the themes here, but to even put some more points on this. It is the program manager's responsibility and his or her team to drive a program. But what I have found too often in government is that the program manager really is not given the authority, right, many times. And there's not a decision-making, a governance model at the highest levels of the agency to effectively guide and to help the program manager. So I've actually reviewed programs, sir, where you literally have had program managers being pulled different directions by different senior leaders in the organization. That's a recipe for failure. I have found over and over in reviews of programs, probably reviewed more than 100 major programs in U.S. federal government, that we usually have failure when a combination of not having the skilled program manager and the team that's supporting that program, and I'm talking about government people here, this isn't just about contractors, government people, and we don't also have a good governance model that's set up so you have the right people together to be able to make the right decisions. And time again, that's where I've seen failure.
My time has expired, Mr. Chairman, but there's a real key here with these project managers and lack of accountability in this whole structure, that there's a major breakdown there. Ms. Lee, your comments about the criminalization of commerce, I'd love to hear further. You go deeper into that situation as we had time, but thank you, and I yield back.
Yes, sir.